Good day, this is John Camilleri, and welcome to I Don't Know What I'm Doing, a show about inspiration, creativity, and the creative process. Joining me today is Mr. Dimitri Pittas, powerhouse operatic tenor. Dimitri has sung in opera houses across Europe and the U.S., well remembered as Macduff and Macbeth, Don Carlo, and prior to the collapse of public performances everywhere, Pinkerton and Madame Butterfly. Joining Dimitri is Leah Edwards-Pittas, soprano from Broadway to the Met. She has performed most everywhere and with everyone. So I am going to throw out my opening question for both of you. If you could be one of your characters you've performed as, which one would you choose to be and why?
I think that character for me would change based on the, year or decade that I'm living in, I guess. I don't know. I always kind of, there's always been something about the Duke in Rigoletto that's been kind of seducing in terms of just, the the power that he has, but how there's always something, there's more than just what's going on with the power. There are always things behind it, and sometimes those things behind it are way more important. And it's kind of a bit telling about society and power in general, the older that I get. So I kind of learned to appreciate that story a lot more. I certainly wouldn't want to be the Duke, but I just love, I don't know, there's something about his naivete, perhaps, that is, I don't know, it's fun to play. Let's just put it that way. My wife is laughing because because he's just
because he's a complete chauvinist, and I find it hilarious, mostly because, our internet lost. What happened?
No, your answer, it went completely gobbledygook. So if you want to start that over again, that'd be fantastic.
I was laughing at him because the Duke is such a chauvinist, and I love. My answer was going to be Carrie Pipperidge, who is, in my opinion, heroine of Carousel. I know that she's not the ingenue, but she is the sassy sidekick friend who, as far as women's empowerment goes, she spoke her mind in a time when that was completely inappropriate and out of place. And she stretched every boundary, but she loved deeply, and in the story found the guy she loved and made the life that she wanted to live. And that's not really the story that you follow in Carousel, but as you watch her go through this whole thing, and she goes to New York, and when instead of, it's the big trip from Maine, and she, picks up her dress and shows her stockings and doesn't care what anybody says. And it actually, I just think she's the most fun. Every time I do that show, I just find more and more about her that I really love.
Yeah. And I do want to say, I'm thinking about, me liking the Duke when I was in my 20s and 30s. Nowadays.
Now it comes. Now is the wait. Let me change my answer.
Hold on, I'm not changing my answer. I just, I went on too long about the Duke, and I didn't talk about anybody else. That's all.
So as we get into this discussion, I'm going to ask you both to give me your definition of what it means to be creative.
Well, it's pretty tough right now. I think a lot of creativity it's hard to find in the world, at least in the form that we have known it prior to 2020. We are being creative in lots of different ways right now. We have to, as artists, find creative outlets for ourselves. Creativity is it's transforming, I think, right now for us. When we come out on the other side of this, I think because we are learning to create and recreate, I think we're going to be the better off for it. But it's pretty hard right now. It's pretty hard to get the juices flowing sometimes, when there is no kind of, there's no end in sight right now. There's no like, okay, we're gonna be back on stage on this day, and there's no opening night right now to look forward to, and that is kind of difficult. But I don't know. Do you want to chime in at all?
Well, one of the things that we're always told as young singers, actors, pianists, whatever, is that everybody finds their own path, and that's the world's most annoying phrase when you don't know what it means and you just want some direction from people, but then you become an old person and you have found your own path, and it doesn't, you just sort of wake up one day and realize that that's what you're doing. And for me, that's always been my creative outlets have it's exactly as you say, the transforming thing. I think creativity is in and of itself a constant transformation. That's what being creative is taking your moment in time and adapting to it. And I, just tiny background, I went from being a ballerina and that was taking too much time of my day, and I wanted to be a pianist. And so in order to have the amount of hours in a day to practice piano, I needed to find a different outlet for dance. And so I started tapping because that required less time in the studio than ballet. And so then I went into, from tap and then piano, and then all of a sudden I went into musical theater, and then I went into opera. And it just that's my creative journey has been one that is constantly changing, and it is constantly in flux. And now, I never wanted to be a mom, and then I became a mom, and it's all I wanted to do. And in that world, that's been finding that creativity of where my artistry and where my momhood intersect has in this very moment made this incredible creation that, we're doing together with opening this new opera and theater company that is a place that if you had asked me when I was 18 years old and somebody said you'll find your own path, I, wanted to just get up and walk out of the classroom and be like, that's not helpful. But, in this moment in time, I want to say to somebody, you'll find your own path.
Yeah, we've been trying to find ways of performing and existing as performers in front of people. A lot of artists and a lot of performers are being very creative behind computer screens and cameras, and they're doing great things. They're giving performances that people can see, but there's something just so special about a live performance and feeling that energy, feeling that air between a performer and an audience member. And we had to find a way of recreating that. And so we've kind of been doing that. And it's been great because it's kind of, when I don't do a lot of musical theater. Mostly what I do is opera, and therefore I'm kind of bound by an art form that is 200 and whatever years old. Sometimes it's difficult to you find yourself recreating more than creating when you're doing something like opera, unless you're right in the moment the whole time. But with what it is that we're doing, a lot of times what we're doing is on the fly, and that is a fun kind of creativity. We'll just be we'll be performing for some community members, or some neighborhood members out on our driveway, and we'll just decide, on the fly, well, let's do this number instead of this number, and that's always kind of fun, because you always that spur of the moment decision can bring a lot of great energy to an audience, but it also can bring a bit of anxiety to us too. But because everything is so fresh and new and undiscovered, that we're just going with it, and we're having a lot of fun, and the audiences are having a lot of fun with it too.
going into what you just said about working on these performances, just so my listeners know that you guys have both been going out into the public and you've been doing concerts at different locations throughout the city of Charleston, South Carolina, where you live. What brought this on for you? How did this idea come about? I see you've done it as a pair, but you've also you have an accompanist who comes in to do some of the shows with you as well. How did the idea come about, and then the whole process for bringing it together?
Well, our pianist has actually been, he's part of the beginning brainstorm. Dimitri got sent home because of COVID concerns over in Europe. And so he was home. We wanted to, run through some repertoire with our pianist friend here. And he said, sure, let me just throw my keyboard in my car and I'll sit in your driveway and you guys come out on the porch and we'll, rehearse.
We chuckled about that for a few minutes.
And then he said, wait, but let me actually call. How, seriously, do you want to, let's get a piano and a truck and, let's do this in your driveway. And we're like, great, let's, So he came, he called the music store. And so we ended up with the truck and the piano in the truck in the driveway with our piano. He comes on his own. The truck comes with the piano. He gets in the truck. We stay far away.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think what's special, as we were trying to sort of talk through what's been so successful about it, is that in this time when, everybody has always taken closeness for granted, it would seem. We didn't know we were doing that until we weren't allowed to touch or hug or see or, pass anybody. And I think what is actually very special about what we're doing is that we can actually still put a scene on when it's the two of us, and we can do things like touch, which seems highly scandalous and yet somehow oddly normal. It's been, I think it's cathartic for everybody. It's cathartic for us to be able to express all this vast span of emotions that everybody's going through on a daily basis in this sort of, chaotic limbo that we're in. Anger, fear, anxiety, love, loneliness, whatever. These are all things, big ideas that are expressed in opera and theater that everybody is suddenly relating to. And so I think I think it's cathartic for everybody, us as performers and audience members as listeners, to just sigh a deep breath of release of, okay, everybody's feeling this way, whether or not it's, from fictitious musical aspect or the actual current state of affairs.
We've had people come up to us and say that coming to our little 20 or 25-minute concert has lifted their spirits and has changed the direction of their emotions for the day or the week. And it's inspired them to go and do other things, or even if it's just something as simple as go home and, clean off their record player and start playing some records again and things like that. So we're doing it for the community. We're doing it for society
and ourselves
a little bit. We're doing it for our art form too. We don't want, we're not sure how long theaters are going to remain closed, and we're trying to ensure that in the end of the, whatever, 18 months, 24 months, however many months this is going to happen, that people are still interested in going to theaters, going to operas, going to plays, going to concerts. It's going to be hard to get them back into the seats, I think. But at least we're reminding them that it is still existing.
I think more than that, though. I mean, we're finding that instead of having to remind people, that they will miss it, I think they're all realizing that they do miss it. You miss live theater when you don't have
when you can't get
opportunity to go.
The Holy City Arts and Lyric Opera, where did this idea come from? How long has been the process for getting this whole organization started and off the ground?
Well, we've been...
I think it depends on which one of us you ask.
We moved down to Charleston from New York in 2015. And I think part of our move was that we wanted to create a family, and we didn't think that we were up for doing it in New York. And that mostly had to do with the fact that I am gone a lot, and it's just
I need more trees than there are in New York.
Yeah. So we started looking for a place to live, and we came to Charleston and fell in love with it, and we came back a month later and put in an offer on a house. And so we've been down here since then, and we kind of came almost like we were. It's like a hideaway for us, you know, like we would go up to New York and work, and then we would come back down here, and it would be kind of paradise. But the deeper that our roots started to grow as we spent more and more time here, we started realizing that we weren't being exposed to opera down here as much as New York was, or as even some of the other cities where we work and play. Or musical theater, outside of the tours really that come through. Yeah,
it's an incredibly musical town, not at all in the classical arts.
And there's a lot of fine arts down here too. It's incredible.
Yeah, a lot of visual arts.
But the performing
classical performing arts are not as big.
Yeah. So we started, you know, as we kind of branched out into society and started meeting friends, and they'd say, oh, you know, what do you do for a living? And we'd say, oh, we're singers, you know, Broadway singers, opera singers. They'd say, oh my gosh, I love that, and blah, blah, blah. And they'd always say, we'd love to see more of that here in Charleston. And so
it was about a year ago.
Yeah.
That we did a big concert together with the Charleston Symphony. And at the after party, there were enough encouraging remarks about starting a company that we just finally caved and started at least thinking. But what we have done is that we spent the last year sort of doing groundwork. It's a completely insane venture to start an opera company in this day and age, because so many are closing. The arts are the first place that people start cutting their funding or their donations or whatever. But there's a very clear need for it here. And the more that we did our groundwork with any age group, any, you know, sort of a rich, poor, old, young, anybody, anyone and everyone either loved it because we were their neighbors and that was really cool because that's what we did, or because it was something that they were very passionate about. You know, at the Riverdog Stadium, we met an usher who goes and watches anytime they air the Met HD broadcasts. And, you know, she loves it. And she was talking to us at the Riverdog Stadium in the middle, you know, we're watching baseball and talking about opera. And it was such an awesome, you know, again, the marriage of like low country living, being chill and like having beer, eating hot dogs, watching baseball. Oh, and by the way, people also want to see opera. And so it sort of, the more people we met and the more people that got excited, we had started forming the company. And we got our, you know, nonprofit status, and we just sort of did everything in a step-by-step order. And then COVID happened and we accidentally started this concert series in our driveway, and all of our neighbors were like, do this, tell people about your company that you're starting. And we're like, but that's a totally unglamorous way to launch a company, is like, by accident, here's also opera company. Except that every time we've said it, people are like, oh, really? How can I be involved? And so it's become this, like, I mean, for lack of a better term, like a grassroots opera company that we're, you know, the leaders of. It's very cool. And there are tons of people coming out of the woodwork and offering whatever their service is, whether it's, you know, scenic design or a nonprofit lawyer or, you know, family I don't, kids who have always been involved in the arts. Like it's just this massive group effort and everyone's excited about it. So
Yeah.
we are thrilled that there is a community that wants to be a part of this. And
And from a business
surprising and exciting.
From a business perspective, the fact that we're starting an organization during a pandemic, I think we can only benefit from, because we're starting in leaner times, and history has shown that companies or organizations that start when times are good, when something like this tends to happen, they don't really know how to handle a situation. And so, because we're already starting on an empty tank of gas, so to speak, we're learning so much more about how to get out into the community and how to engage the community, and how we're learning how the community needs us too right now, more so. So it's been
how
wonderful.
We need them, which is always the part that I think, we forget as the glamour on the other side of the curtain, on the stage side of the curtain, as opposed to the seat side of the curtain. It just, we very often forget that, that is part, without an audience, we don't have a job, which is incredibly evident right now. But we also don't have, it goes back to your whole question about creativity. It's part of what helps us be creative is the audience. And so in doing this company within the community, we've had several Zoom meetings that are, we have an idea, and then it's, okay, troubleshoot this for us. Give us all the things we haven't thought about. And there are incredibly productive comments about, anything is, well, we've had a couple of them on various topics, but, with our logo design, for example, and suddenly, we had a lot of conversations about things we didn't think about, like, would you like that on a business card or on a billboard? And he and, Dimitri and I are like, I don't know. Does that matter? And all the logo guys are like, yes, it matters. But, problem solving in general across the board has just been just such a larger scale. And in opera itself, we know, is the largest collaborative art form. And it has only proven more so, in starting this, that it is a collaborative effort in every sense of the word. And, I don't think it's a thing that we could have started anywhere else. This place is very special in that it is still very, very community oriented. And we're the people that, are in gardening clothes and say hey when somebody drives by, and then also we're the people that they come see in black tie on the stage. And it just, the duality of all of that has made it really remarkable and successful to this point. So we're taking every day as it comes, with our new challenges and our new adventures. So it's, we'll see where it goes from here. What's that thing? Wherever you are, there you are. How does that go?
Just remember, well, my father used to say it. It was kind of annoying when he would say it, but yeah, just remember, he would say, wherever you go, however you get there, no matter how you get there, whatever it is, there you are.
There you are.
It's just kind of like
that.
Oh, come on, quit it. Just tell me what to do.
It's a little like you'll find your own path.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the world's most irritating thing. And yet when you think about it for just a second, it's like, here I am.
I don't think I've ever said we'll see as much in my life as I have in the last 2 months. But it's just, there's just so many, who knows? Yeah, that's another one. Who knows? But that's just kind of where we are. That's where we are with art, with life, with society. I think we just, we're doing everything that we can, and everything that we can create and that we can kind of control in a positive manner. And who knows about the rest of it.
It's just fascinating to me that with you launching in the middle of a pandemic, and you're taking very much something that was a location-based performance. You had to come to a specific performance space to see opera. And with you going out to the public, you've flipped the paradigm a little bit and been like, okay, since we can't have you come to our music, we're bringing it to you. And going out into the communities, what have been some of the interesting responses you've gotten with you showing up? We've got a truck, we've got a piano, we've got a piano player, and we've got two singers popping up in different neighborhoods. And what has been the responses you've gotten as you've gone into different neighborhoods to perform?
Well, generally, I mean, it has been extremely appreciative. Everybody loves the break in the monotony of life recently. But beyond that, it's
all been voluntary so far. It's all been friends that say, we want you to come sing for us. So we haven't gone anywhere.
But we're not just singing
where it's
private concerts. I mean, there are lots of people.
No, I mean, it's huge neighborhood things, but we go, we have a friend who is interested. And, we did the first day we did it, we live in a place where our driveway is across from, we have neighbors on either side with huge yards. We have neighbors 2 across the street with big yards. And then we live across from a cul-de-sac, and across, down the street about 4 houses to another cul-de-sac. So we had about 50 people at our first driveway concert, just our neighbors hanging out,
6
socially
feet apart,
distanced, and no, I mean, they were,
Yeah.
and just, they asked us if they should bring lawn chairs, and we said no to the first concert because we're like, just stand there. We're not going to sing for very long. We'll, see how this goes, and then maybe at the next one we can bring lawn chairs. But
yeah, I mean, after our first number, we always say the two rules that we have is that we are going to keep the concert short because we don't want people together too long, and you as an audience need to make sure that you're social distancing. As long as those 2 things continue to happen, we'll continue to do these concerts.
Yeah, that's it. But the audience response has been, I mean, it has been overwhelmingly positive. But no, it wasn't. It's just, we're not just popping up in parking lots and to unsuspecting, passersby who were like, I just really wanted some quiet time to myself. Stop singing to me.
We thought about that originally. One of the things we wanted to do was maybe go out to places where people were naturally gathering in social distance situations. So we're thinking, like the lines that were being created outside of places like Costco and Trader Joe's and supermarkets in general, where they had to wait outside because they were limiting the amount of people that were going inside. We figured, well, why don't we just go, park in a parking lot and sing for these people that are, standing in line, and give them something to kind of, enjoy while they're waiting to go into the stores. But then we kind of realized, people, have to stay home right now, or at least when we first started it, everybody was, under orders to stay at home, and maybe that some of these people that were going out shopping were going out, yes, because they needed to buy things, but also because they needed to just kind of get away and get into their own minds and just have some time without their families, breathing down their necks the whole time. And so we thought maybe it's not such a good thing to go and force it upon people. And so we're not forcing it on people. We're not just kind of showing up
to our knowledge.
Yeah. But we're not just showing up in the, in the produce section of a supermarket, and doing we definitely, people.
It has been friends. And from those, the first day we did 2 concerts. We did one in our driveway and then one at a friend's. And from that, we just got phone call after phone call after phone call about, when can you come to my neighborhood? When can you come to my neighborhood? And it has been nonstop since the first day we did this. And I just spoke to a woman today she had posted one of the local news stories that covered it was, had a live stream up that's had over 20,000 views at this point, and people have been tagging other people in Charleston and have you seen this and have they been to your neighborhood? And it's but this one woman said, does anybody know how we can get in touch with them? And I was like, wow, that's a pretty major marketing flaw. Speaking of community-based help. And so I wrote to her on Facebook and I said, I just saw your comment on the live feed from, 4 weeks ago. Are you still, interested in being in touch? And she wrote back and said, I just couldn't hear the name of your company. I've been trying to find you guys. Yes, I'm so excited. We'd love for you to come here. Anyway, and so but each group, for lack of a better, example, it's spreading sort of like, so it's called going viral, as it were. But it's, one person who comes to our concert calls 5 of their friends, and then we go to 5 of those neighborhoods, and then all those people in those neighborhoods are calling all their friends. And so it is growing exponentially weekly, which is both exciting and, incredibly busy. But we get to sing tons of music that we love to sing. We get to actually sing together. Yeah. Which is nice. It's not something that we get to do very much.
In a performance setting, anyway.
In a performance setting.
We can rock out to Billy Joel in the car with the windows down all the time.
Also some Queen. We're teaching the important things to our children, too. No Queen in these concerts.
Yet.
Just from what you're describing, it sounds like, even though we have to be social distance, the music and what you're creating is actually connecting people, even with the space between them. There's a connection going on for you guys. It is
connective tissue. Yeah. It without people, sitting elbow to elbow in a theater, they're still given the opportunity to experience something as a group, as a community. And that is what strengthens the bonds in a community. Again, I go back to all of the artists and all of my friends and colleagues that are doing things on the internet, and it's wonderful, and they're expressing themselves, and people are able to experience music, but they're not getting that connective tissue by being in a group. And we don't know when that's going to happen again, but we're pursuing ways of trying to get that feeling into society in larger numbers, but in safe numbers also. And it's tricky. We have to make sure that we're following guidelines and things like that. But I think it's an issue that needs to be resolved sooner rather than later.
But even, there's been a lot of people just staying home, as they should, but not even, there's a lot less community interaction, just like a friendly face or a wave hello or whatever. And these, even people who are just all sitting on their porches, people are coming out onto their porches and they wave to their neighbors and they check in. It's just sort of are you sick? Are you sick? Are you good? How is your family? A very just being able to touch people visually has made a huge difference that we've noticed, and that also has been commented on. A friend, one of the people who hosted us, did so for a birthday party for a friend of hers who loves opera, and it was she sent us a note the next week that said, pretty much, it took me a week to write this because every time I sat down to write it, I was so overwhelmed with emotion. I was ready to just sit at home and feel sorry for myself on this birthday. And you made it so far superior to any other birthday I've ever had. And so it's been, obviously those are the stories that we like to hear. But it's, it is special, and it makes people feel special, and it is, I think honestly it's because they're in smaller groups, smaller numbers of groups, rather than, you know, the 2,500 people in an audience. I think it makes people feel like it was something special just for them, which has been, and because we're happy to go neighborhood to neighborhood and sing 20 minutes, you know, we're not singing a 3-hour opera 4 times a day. You know, it's just, we're able to get the music to more people quickly, and at least just pick up somebody's day a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to start off my next question by going to Leah, because you've had a very interesting journey for your creativity. My question is going, what drew you into the world of singing over other creative endeavors? Because you went from being, I think, a gymnast when you were very young, to a ballet dancer, to a pianist, and singing was like the last leg on the journey for it. So how did you choose, why singing over all these other things that you've been doing over your whole life?
Gosh. Well, I would like to start that answer with, I have now fortunately found a part of my life when I have been able to incorporate all of those things, which I didn't think was ever going to be possible. But I've been having a very good time exploring how I can do all of those things at once now, which has been a very new and constructive creative journey for me. But I went to college as a pianist at a conservatory where freshmen had to, their first year, we have scale juries. So instead of playing at the end of the year exams, instead of playing, on top of playing pieces, we also had a scale jury, which was the faculty would just call out a letter. And at the beginning of the year, they give you sort of this 2-sheet thing that you have to memorize and know. So they just shout a letter at you and you play that letter, the 2 sheets, you know, major, minor, all the things, and arpeggios and several octaves of scales and just all kinds of things. And I have always lived to make art collaboratively. And I wanted to play chamber music, and they don't let freshmen play chamber music. And so my teacher, who was a wonderful, wonderful lady in this time of my life that I desperately needed to, you know, play chamber music, said, well, I'll tell you what, as a compromise, there's a new voice teacher who needs a pianist for her studio. You go do that. And pretty much everybody was like, haha, the cute little freshman wants to collaborate. We'll stick her in a voice studio and she'll never ask to collaborate again. But this teacher who I was playing for had such an incredible passion for teaching and could make people who came into her studio unable to sing by the end of an hour lesson, you know, could sing. So I asked her if I could take a lesson, and she sort of did that voice teacher, I'll hear you thing. And then I went in and sang for her, and she said, you have to stop all of what you're doing and change and be a singer immediately. And I was like, I didn't know what that meant for a long time. But so it took me about a year. I double majored-ish for, you know, sort of a year and a half, and then ended up switching into being a voice major, graduated my undergrad as such, and then did my master's in voice and opera, and sort of moved along from there and stayed in voice. But it, even after my master's degree, I was doing a lot more new music and you know, in the operatic vein, and then doing a lot more musical theater. And I sort of have gone back and forth even within the vocal world. It just is always It's funny you ask what creativity. It's constantly in my, what is creating to you? It's just this constant like scroll in my brain of, oh, would have been a really good answer. um, my whole life, I exist to create. I exist to create. And I whatever that means, if it's, cooking or making an outfit for my children, or, making a new role, or, learning who knows what, some craft. It is a constant, purposeful creation every day. That didn't really answer your voice question, but somehow got in there.
You gave the journey. I thought that was a very good answer. That whole process, getting from point A to point B, that works. It works great. Now, how about you, Dimitri? Why singing over everything else? Why is that your connecting power right there?
Well, I was brought up in a household that always had music playing. My mother would listen to the crooners, and my dad would listen to the rock bands from the 60s and 70s, and so it was always kind of there in me, and I began performing, I think, in 5th or 6th grade, on stage. I played the conductor in The Music Man. Yeah. And also the constable. It was a dual role. I don't know if that's how it is is that how it is? I'm not sure if that's how it is in the actual score. If that with one, what is that? Is a swing role? Not a swing. It's a whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I got to play 2 roles in one show, and that was fantastic. And then so it was 11th grade, and I just went to a great school district that had great music, and I loved being in it. I loved being in band and orchestra and choir, and it was time for me to kind of decide what schools I wanted to apply for college, and what did I kind of want to major in. And the 2 things that I really liked at the time was music and math. And but my choir teacher in high school, Linda Contino, she's like, well, why don't you audition for some schools, and you can go into music education, or you can go into performance. You could do whatever it is you want to do. So I went home and I told my parents that, and my dad, who was a very practical man, said, "Oh, education, that's good. You could be a teacher, and you could, you get paid summers, and you can have vacations, and this and that. That sounds very good. You should do that." So I said, "Well, okay, fine, yeah. I could teach math too, but music sounds fun." And so I went to music education, and that's where you and I met in Potsdam. And while I was there, I had to switch voice studios after my first year, because we were put into Dan Gordon's voice studio, who was a conductor, a choral conductor. He wasn't a voice teacher, but he knew enough about the voice to be able to teach an 18-year-old freshman about it. And but he said, if you're serious about the voice, then you might want to find another voice teacher. And so that's when I went studio hunting, and I found Bob Lowen, and I took a voice lesson with him. And he strongly urged that I consider becoming a performer instead of an educator, because he heard something in me that I didn't know was there. So I worked with him for a couple of months, maybe even a couple of years. And I remember going home one Christmas break or something to my parents, and I went to my dad and I said, "Hey, so I think I'm going to change from education to performance. I'm going to be a performer. I'm going to be a singer." And he's my father, the practical man, said, "You're going to be a singer? Oh yeah, what restaurant are you going to work in?" And that was kind of a little bit of a hit to me. But then that same, it must have been that same year, my parents came up and they saw me do my senior show, which was La Boheme, and that was they took a big chance on a bunch of 20, 21-year-olds singing La Boheme. But we did it, and my dad and mom were at the performance, And they came back afterwards and they said, there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be doing this. And so that kind of sealed it, because I knew that I was supposed to be doing it, and I kind of got their blessing in the good Greek child wanting, to make sure that his parents are happy with his decisions. And so I pursued it. And that's when I went and did a master's program in Montreal and kind of started my, training from there, and ended up going into the Lindemann program at the Met. And wow, I graduated from that in 2006. So here I am 14 years later, still out there, still singing.
You done good, kid. You done good. We're shifting gears from all these positive, wonderful stories to talk about rejection a little bit. What is a memory you both can recall of someone rejecting your art, and how did you deal and respond to it?
Wow.
Oh man,
I mean,
my
that
list
is
there is not enough time on this show for my rejection list.
See, that's a problem with artists, is you remember more rejection than the positive, like, great job, you're doing wonderful. It's always like, yeah, you missed that note in the 30-second measure.
Literally today we were doing that. We were going over some video footage from these concerts that we're doing, and both Dimitri and I just sat there with disgusted looks on our faces that were like, this is terrible. We can't put this out into the world. This is absolutely unacceptable. It was pretty funny.
It's yeah, it's hard. It's hard as an artist. Like you said, like, it doesn't matter how many accolades you get. It's always the one, the one negative comment. I mean, even in that, Leah was talking about how the video that that the local news put on Facebook, the stream, it had like 20,000 hits. And we're reading the comments, and it's always like, oh my God, this is amazing, blah, 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 blah. There's one person that said, thank goodness they're not my neighbors. And I was instantly like, oh man. But, one person out of 20,000, I think, yeah, we'll take those odds. But it still hurt. It still stung. One person out of 20,000, and it still stung.
At least it wasn't something like, he's a little pitchy.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
He's got a pitchy dog. No, no.
I think the worst rejection that I've ever, it wasn't even a rejection. It's, I don't know. Maybe you don't feel this way, but rejection doesn't actually hurt me as much, because at least it's an answer. It's somebody once said to me, you don't go out for the part of a 6'5" black man because you're not going to get it. So why do you think that, like, you might be the person, even if you go in for a 5'6" brown-haired soprano part, you might look too much like the casting director's ex-wife to, get a role. Like, it's not personal. It's not, maybe you wore the wrong thing, or maybe you tripped coming in, or maybe you gave an impression completely different than you thought you did. You can't, it's not even so much as far as like audition rejection anyway. You just have to you get so used to the rejection because you can't possibly get all of the things that you go in for. But the worst thing that anybody ever said to me, I think, was, you're really amazing, and we're not going to hire you. And I was like, okay, I'd love to hear, I would, thank you. I'd love to know why. And they're like, I don't really know. And I was like, that's not an okay answer. I need to know, because then you're just living in this, like, I'm amazing, said someone who didn't hire me. It was totally crazy.
Art is so subjective, man.
Yeah, I have a really hard time with not having an exact answer, which is, I know that doesn't really count as rejection. Again, this show is not long enough for my long list of rejections. I actually have saved, I have saved every single rejection letter I've ever gotten. It's in a folder, and there are some really good statements, like very diplomatic. Thank you so much for whatever. But I've saved them just for fun for my book. I'm going to make it an appendix.
Most of your audience knows the term PFO at this point, right? Yeah. Okay. Fine. So that'll just be the name of that appendix will be the PFOs, yeah. Which is really, really fun. Rejection comes in lots of different forms, right? Like you get the audition rejection, you get the, you thought that you had you did a really bang up job at a company, and then you don't get hired back. And that's kind of that is a rejection in a sense, when you thought that you do a really good job someplace and you thought that you'd get back there, because that is the best compliment that you can get as an artist and as somebody in the industry. And when that doesn't happen, it kind of hurts a little bit. Yeah, I mean, so the latest, actually, it was kind of funny. I was just in London performing, and I was doing Madame Butterfly, and there's a history in British theater of the pantomime. The pantomime is, of course, like it usually happens during the holidays, but it happens all the time now, where they always boo the villain on stage. And they applaud when the bad thing happens to the villain and stuff like that. And so anyway, I was singing Madame Butterfly, and Pinkerton is not a nice guy. Again, I think he's just kind of naive, and he doesn't really understand what's happening beyond his nose, but that's for a different podcast. And, but every night I would get out there for my bows, and I would get booed. And, they didn't mean it, I was performing. I thought I was turning in great performances, and like even the administration was like, "Oh, we're so sorry. It's the pantomime. You have to understand." I was like, "No, I get it. It's okay. I get it." The first couple of performances, it was like I'd come backstage afterwards, and instead of feeling the elation of having a crowd that adored you and thanked you for performing all night, because that's really what the applause are about. It's about thanking the artist for taking them on a journey for 2.5 hours or 3 hours. And I just felt like I wasn't appreciated, but it wasn't the case. Anyway, I ended up starting to play with the audience more in my bows. And then I do like this Hulk Hogan thing, like putting my hand to my ear and like egging them on and making them boo for me even more. And it kind of made me feel better. And then I ended up getting, applause and whoops and hoorays and yippies and stuff in the end too, which I was happy about. But man, that rejection, that opening night of just this wave of boos coming over me, if I didn't know that it was coming, I would have cried right there on the in front of the curtain. But I knew it was there. So
now, speaking of roles, since Pinkerton's a fantastic role for both of you, when you're inhabiting characters, how do you take this character who's been developed for you and given to you? How do you infuse it? What's your process for taking yourself and putting yourself into the character itself?
Well, I think for me, the first thing that I want to look at is how much of the character I can relate to, and what, not necessarily what the character is going through is going to match up with your life. And so, but you have to find things that seem to make sense to you, to your brain, to your emotions. And sometimes you have to literally you have to take a step away from that character in terms of what is the exact thing that character is going through. If you take a step away and you look at a broader picture of it, and you try and figure out a situation that you've experienced in your life where you would feel some sort of emotion, and then it's just a question of how much of that how much of that experience do you want to bring to the foreground of your mind while you're performing? Because I wear my heart on my sleeve, and if I just start to think about my experience a little too much, I will get to the edge, and I will, to the point where I might not be able to perform. So it's just then at that point a matter of playing with it and bringing it forward and backwards in the window. And, I think towing that line is where we as artists try and get, so that that emotion is palpable with the audience, but also, at a place where we're constantly in control of it. So once I find those moments in that character's journey through the night, then I can start to kind of fill in all of the other elements. But in the journey of learning a character, you really need to find those deep, heavy emotions first, and kind of fill in afterwards. I think that's kind of how I approach my characters and character analysis. But my wife might do something completely different. I don't know.
Well, no, I just, it's so funny because I do so much musical theater that it's such a different, opera was written so much longer ago, and situations that were so much longer ago. And so you have to, in order to, in order to find something relatable. I mean, there's nothing, Dimitri has not been in the armed forces. He has not, gone off to Japan and married some 16-year-old geisha. Like, he hasn't, there are a lot of things that, like, you have to find. It's exactly what he says, that you have to find the emotion that is at the heart of all of that, and find your own. Similarly or completely the opposite, I don't really know which way this goes, but like this whole, going back to the Carrie Pipperidge thing, she was a woman in a time when women were not valued as having, as their opinions not having any purpose. And, they're not supposed to work. They're supposed to be barefoot and pregnant and, care for their husbands. And she just, fortunately, there are characters like that are much more relatable to me. I'm trying to think who, I don't know. I mean, I guess because I married somebody who makes our livelihood for us, I get to take the roles that I want to take. And then I get to take the, characters that I really enjoy exploring. I actually do have some trouble when I am playing characters that people very often make weaker, and going to that place, because I struggle with wanting the characters to make different choices than they do. And finding strength in things where, in effect, they end up weaker as a character in the show. And I think, well, no, if only I could make this character's choice different, it might, and like, I have this hope that no matter what, it would make a different choice, or a different path, or a different, outcome, but it doesn't. So that sometimes that's a struggle, because you as a human, and trying to find that emotion and trying to sort of therapy your way through what struggles you should face, and what outcomes you should just accept. It's hard. It's hard when what you want to happen doesn't align with the show. We very often talk. I don't get the opportunity to sing Cinderella and Into the Woods. That is not really a role that I match with in an audition, but I did. Someone had to step away from a show, and I got to go in and do Cinderella. And I had never I'd never really explored her as a character. She sings the first notes of the show and the last notes of the show. And so her journey is the length of the show. And she goes from being this sort of sad Cinderella character that we all know from Disney, and really is able to find strength and togetherness and joy. And it was such a discovery for me that I didn't. Sometimes when you're in shows or know shows so deeply, if you know The Witch or Baker's Wife or whatever, I just had never explored Cinderella, and she was really a joy for me to find, instead of playing her like a ditz, which a lot of directors allow you to do as Cinderella. She really has so much more to her that I found really fascinating and enjoyable to explore.
You're at home, you're parenting, and you're practicing. What's the practicing schedule like with children in the house and a million other things going on around you at the same time?
Yeah.
Not.
It's not. There isn't a schedule per se. It's oh my goodness, there is nobody on the ground floor of this house right now except for me and a piano. So maybe I'll go and sing a little bit. But inevitably, our oldest son, who's 3 years old, will come running down the stairs and come and sit next to me on the piano bench. He loves to hear us sing. His attention span is kind of short with regards to us rehearsing. When we're in performance, he literally sits there and watches everything. He's begun singing some of the repertoire that we've been repeating in our concerts, which is amazing. But it's being home full time, working at home with kids that are not in school and don't get screen time has definitely been challenging for these last 2 months.
It is very difficult to practice duets when there's no one to watch the two humans that we created. It is a new and interesting challenge. Fortunately, we have, again, just like Dimitri said, we have two children who are capable of sitting and listening, albeit sometimes with Lego trains driving their way in and out. Those good old-fashioned Hess trucks, we have a couple of those. They make excellent beeping noises when you're trying to sing pianissimo.
Yeah, occasionally I'll really turn the squealo on an A flat or a B flat, and the 5-month-old will let a kind of scream out to say that wasn't very pleasing to his ears. But it's
new challenges. It really humbles you, for sure.
Yeah. But so a lot of what we're doing also, because we are socially distancing ourselves from our pianists too, is that we're not really going over any music before we do these concerts, which is kind of fun and kind of nerve-wracking at the same time. So, before we get out there and we announce the piece, and really we're like basically buying time so that he can find the piece in his iPad that we sent to him from 2 or 3 days ago. And he gets it up, and then, I'll suddenly realize, oh, wow, I'm going to do a fermata here, and he doesn't have any clue about it. And so I'll have to take 30 seconds and talk through the number with him. So practicing right now is not as...
It's not a conventional practice session, for sure.
Yeah. But we're getting better at it in terms of finding times where Leah and I can talk about things, or go through the lyrics of duets and stuff like that. Even if we're just kind of playing in the playroom, building some Legos or doing an arts and crafts, we'll be singing there. So we get brain sessions in, but as far as vocal sessions, that's hard to come by nowadays.
Fewer and farther between.
Yeah.
I'll close out this whole discussion with you guys. Is you're creative at work all day. Do you continue that when you're off hours? What's your way of decompressing at the end of the day?
Ooh. I like to go to bed by 9.
Sounds
So
very good.
my lately, I have been watching the Great British Baking
Show.
Show. I just started. I started at the very beginning. I hadn't watched it at all before, and so I've been kind of doing that to just kind of chill out for the last hour before I go to bed, and that's been really fun. Leia and I used to watch Grey's Anatomy. We started, I think, in like October of last year, and we watched all, 15 episodes, I think, seasons over 5 months. So yeah, that was the only TV that we watched was Grey's Anatomy. And I think the new season just came out, so we might have a new project to do.
I will say this, Dimitri, that you are in fine company. My wife uses the Great British Baking Show after very hard days. It's like her Valium.
Yeah.
It's like her antidepressant. She's like, everyone's
Yes.
nice. It's a competition, but everybody's
Yes.
like cheering each other on. It's perfect. Like, I just put it on. I can watch it. I might fall asleep. I might stay up through the whole thing, but she's like, it's just kind television. That's all she can.
Yeah,
She's
it's
like,
kind, and
just nice.
it's rewarding, like watching somebody who has never created something before give it the old college try, and sometimes they miss, and a lot of times they'll totally nail it, and it's really wonderful, and I totally love it, and I'm already, I'm only like halfway through the first season, but I'm already totally vested in it, which is it's really fun. But yeah,
I don't decompress. I stay up at night and like write press releases and stuff, make new banners. I don't.
Yeah, Leia's
make a
definitely
schedule. I live for working. It turns out. I didn't know that.
her brain is on a lot longer than mine is. I have a shut off.
I would love to decompress, but I have 2 children and a company that I apparently thought I should do all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds perfectly regular. No problems
right?
with that. No worries in the world.
One day I'm gonna like go to a beach and just sit there. I don't think I can do
One
that.
day.
Really, I'd like to climb a volcano.
Yeah. And we're not going to beaches anytime soon. Social distancing, folks.
You can skip the beach and Dimitri can take you out fishing.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
That is true.
I have
who takes care of the children in that scenario?
So
they'll crew. No, the children will crew. That's fine. They got to learn how to skin fish, how to properly take care of them.
And they'll get there, but I need a bigger boat. Right now I have an 11.5-foot Boston whaler, with a tiller engine. So I can take. I've been taking my 3-year-old out on it, and it's been great. That is definitely a decompression chamber there. Even being out in the water for a half hour, 45 minutes with him, just watching him enjoy himself has been a great pleasure of mine. But I don't know that the 4 of us plus the dog can be in that boat anymore. I think it's a no. So yeah, we might need.
We could one time.
One time. It is the unsinkable Boston whaler, but I don't want to test it. So.
Well, I want to say thank you to both of you. It's fantastic. First of all, you are first for my show. You're the first time I've had a couple on to talk about creativity.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. It's fantastic catching up. It's very nice meeting you, Leah. And the best of luck to you with Halo. I feel like with you guys, as you guys stated before, like starting in a lean time, I think is when you have much more constraints on you. When it actually comes out of it, I think you guys will have just a fantastic foundation already built and just take off from there.
Thanks. We appreciate your support. And if you want to check us out, go to holycityarts.org. Website's being kind of redone right now, but there's still something there in the meantime. If you want to say hi, please send us an email.
Well, that's it for us. I want to thank my guests, Mr. Dimitri Pittas and Miss Leah Edwards-Pittas, for joining me today. I'm John Camilleri, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I hope you adapt, improvise, and overcome your challenges to find your creativity. See you soon.